Hey, welcome back. This week, we want to talk about problem employees, but not just any kind of problem employees. We want to talk about problem employees who are great performers. How do you deal with that, and what kind of impact does it have on your organization? Boy, we got some great examples, Rob.
Well, I don't understand. So if they're a high-performing employee, you let them do whatever they want. What are we going to talk about for 30 minutes? Like all the ways that you're somehow screwing them up? I don't know. But I'm excited. Let's get after it.
Yeah, it's episode 44. Are your employees holding you hostage? Stay with us. Hi, I'm Kelly Riggs. This podcast is about leadership, but not just any kind of leadership. Counter-mentor leadership, which is our approach to dealing with the chaotic four-generation workplace. It's leadership that works, not theory or hypothetical models. That's the challenge. The workplace has changed dramatically, but the way managers lead has not.
I'm Robby Riggs. The problem is ineffective leaders. Research shows that as few as 1 in 7 leaders are effective. The purpose of this show is to make sure you're not part of the 86% of leaders who are failing. In a sarcastic kind of way, of course. Welcome to the podcast. By the way, if you'd like to read our book, Counter-Mentor Leadership, How to Unlock the Potential of the Four-Generation Workplace, we'll tell you how to get a free hardcover copy at the end of the podcast.
Hey, what's good? Welcome back into the Counter-Mentor Leadership Podcast. We're pumped to have you. It's your boy, Boston Rob, and the Pops on the other side, holding it down in the world headquarters in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma. We're excited you're here. Hey, make sure you find us our past episodes at Counter Mentors. Find us on social media, countermentors.com. We have all sorts of good stuff. And if you haven't bought our world-renowned best-selling book yet, what is wrong with you? Go to Amazon, go to Barnes & Noble, go to iTunes, wherever you buy books.
Hey, by the way, this just in, Robbie. It is the best-selling book in our family. I got that on. That's good data.
Yeah, that's good. We had some people crunch some numbers. We hired some auditors, and we actually did realize it is our best-selling book. Hey, and big shout-out to the other author in our family, Christina Lee Booker. Big shout-out to her. And when she had her dissertation published, she's way smarter than us. Her PhD, it's not even fair. Yeah. But Pops, this is a fun conversation we're going to have today.
I know, but before we start, what is with the shameless promotion? I mean, is it like whoever's in the Super Bowl that year, you've got their show? You've got like 14 teams.
Do your job. Do your job.
Okay, to be fair, if you've been with us a while, you know Rob is a big New England Patriots fan. He's way too young to remember the Boston Patriots when they were terrible.
Jack Hanna? Come on. No, I remember those days.
He's a bandwagon fan.
Pops, when this airs, our Patriots will have already won their 6th Super Bowl. So, I mean, Tommy will be 6-3 in the postseason. I mean, he's a wicked, smart kid. I'm telling you, my boys are going to be drinking beers and partying, and it's going to be wicked fun, kid. Wicked fun.
Okay, yeah.
I'm going to edit all that out.
I'm regretting the fact that I even brought this up. Hey, let's go back to the intro. We talked about problem employees. Are they holding you hostage? And
right.
What was that nonsense about you let them do whatever they want to do? Surely not.
Yeah, that was kind of nonsense. I was completely full of it. We both know that is not true. And frankly, it's a recipe for disaster. And Pops, we have the best example of this going on right now with the Pittsburgh Steelers, who have been perennially this great powerhouse, quote-unquote, healthy organization. And, oh, my gosh, between Le'Veon Bell and Antonio Brown, truly being held hostage. I mean, give us some background here.
Well, hey, listen, there was this great article on ESPN. I think it's called Inside the Antonio Brown Steelers Drama. It's probably over. And you got the talking heads going through it, but there's a really good piece about a lot of the dynamics, interpersonal dynamics of what's going on. And listen, nobody doubts for a minute that Antonio Brown is an unbelievable receiver. Maybe the best in the league. I mean, you could make the case, right?
He's that good. And by the way, he's like my size, which makes it even more ridiculous. I mean, dude has crazy talent.
Okay,
crazy.
Quick question. Sorry for those of you who are listening or watching. I'm going to bore you a little bit if you're not a football fan, but got to put Robbie on the spot. Is he better than Julian Edelman?
Yes. I think that overall, as a wide receiver, he can stretch the field in ways Jules can't. I think between the hash marks, Julian's a better receiver. I'd want Julian on 3rd and 8. I just asked Tom Brady, who against the Chiefs converted 2 3rd and longs against him to him in overtime. But I think overall, if I'm starting a team, Jules is my guy. But I would go with AB because he can stretch the field.
Hey, that's why you listen to us. Cogent football analysis right there.
That's hard-hitting analysis.
That's good. That's hard-hitting. That's really on target. Hey, listen, I'm with you. Listen, in fact, one of the things with Antonio Brown, and one of the things that we'll kind of get into a little bit later, one of the things that he really was upset about was the fact that he doesn't feel valued. And he wanted to make the point, you know what? You know why Schuster is doing so well? What's his full name?
Juju Smith-Schuster.
Yeah, that guy. Juju, who's a crazy talented guy as well.
Absolutely.
I can't do his name. I'm old. But he was saying, hey, look, you know why he's doing so well is because I'm drawing double coverage on every play. How about a little love? How about a little something for me? Big Ben is talking about he wishes he'd have thrown to Schuster instead of me and blah, 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 blah. I think ultimately, Rob, when you get down to the bottom of all of this stuff, really talented employees, really talented players, he's an employee, obviously. The challenge you have is one of ego and value and how people think they are perceived and the way they perceive themselves. Yeah. And so you wonder about, the big question we want to ask ourselves, is it worth it to keep around a really high drama, high problem, culture impacting kind of employee based on the performance?
Yeah, I think we need to peel this onion a little bit because this isn't Terrell Owens who was, blew everything up. It was a nightmare. Antonio Brown has been with the organization for 7 years now? Hasn't been problems. Is he a big personality? Is he charismatic? Yeah, but his teammates love him. He is described as the hardest worker in the building, even more than the starting quarterback, Ben Roethlisberger. So, this isn't a guy that's just this prima donna that has all these physical gifts that just, shows up and expects things to be handed to him. My man works 24/7. So this is a really tough case study because he is a great quote unquote teammate. And that's, by the way, said that's been said throughout the last 7 years. That's not just all of a sudden now people are like, he's a great teammate. We don't want him to leave. This is documented throughout and his work ethic. So, and he produces. So now this is happening.
However, at the same time, you're exactly right. In this article, there's tons of quotes about he's a great guy. He's got great work ethic. He takes care of his
family
kids.
Guy. He's not
out running around in nightclubs and getting stupid. Right. But here's the thing. He also has a history of flouting the rules, being a bit of a prima donna. He doesn't stay at the dormitories when they're in spring practice or whatever it's called, pre-camp.
Right.
He arrives with an entourage, whatever. And
he came in a helicopter last year. It was awesome.
Yeah, well, there's that. So here's what it says. The article says this. Tomlin essentially told the group, this is going back some time, the players, we'll tolerate it now because of what he brings on the field, but the minute production stops, you don't overlook it. Right. And then he said, during the end of the year's news conference, Tomlin said there might come a point where Brown's antics outweigh his ability as a player. But
can we back up, though? As a leader, you tell your team who you set expectations for, you create a standard and a culture for, and you say, well, except for this guy, because he hits his numbers, he exceeds his numbers, he's really good, so he can do whatever he wants. First huge red flag right there, Pops. I
got a problem with that. I do. I got a problem. Look, I know that the quarterback, as an example, he wears a red jersey during practice because we don't want to wipe out, our multi-million-dollar, cog in the wheel. And people say, well, we treat people differently. We treat people differently according to a set of principles and standards. This one says, hey, by the way, you're above the law or the rules or the culture or the values. Everybody else has to do it this way. You don't because you're special.
Yeah, the quarterbacks wear a red jersey, they're treated differently thing, that's total crap. That's like being in a distribution company and you walk into the warehouse and guys are wearing green vests for safety. And when you walk into the non-warehouse part of that facility.
Right. So that's a non-starter as an argument.
Safety thing. Yeah, no, it's zero.
So you've got a guy, for example, and this is funny because you and I do this role play. We act this out all the time. Mm-hmm. It's just one of those standards that we say, hey, look, in our company, we expect people to be at meetings on time. And here's why. It's not because we're micromanagers or we're fascists. it has an impact on productivity. You know, we have a lot of people in the room making a lot of money. We're wasting their time. It impacts communication. There are good reasons to be on time. Well, here's a guy who's routinely coming in late to meetings where the whole team is sitting there and they're looking at how the coach judges the response to that. And what they see is, in fact, the article points out many times he would come late with another player. Other player would get fined. He wouldn't get fined. Now, on occasion, he would get fined, on occasion, to be fair, but it wasn't consistent. Robby, is Tomlin responsible for this problem ultimately? Is he the guy that created this whole deal?
Well, let's start at the beginning, because I think there's blame to go around. But I got to tell you, I strongly disagree with all the talking heads that this is somehow ownership's problem. There's this pervasive thing that since Art Rooney died, it's now the children that have taken over. It's their problem. Let's stop it. Like, my opinion, Antonio Brown's got to be a professional, and part of being a professional, in my opinion, is abiding by the culture and being a great teammate, which is abiding by those expectations. But the vast majority of the blame here, in my opinion, is on Tomlin. I mean, we have seen so much strife and discord in that locker room. Like, if this was an isolated thing, if this was only an Antonio Brown problem, maybe you could convince me this is Antonio Brown. We've seen with Le'Veon Bell. We've seen this with Ben Roethlisberger. We're now seeing it with Antonio Brown. This is a Mike Tomlin lack of leadership problem. Frankly, this is a lack of courage problem. I mean, you think Bill Belichick would allow this? I don't think so.
If Mike Tomlin or any Pittsburgh Steelers are watching this episode, man, they are bagging on us in a big way.
Come on, come at me, bro.
Let's be clear. Tomlin is a good guy. He's obviously a great football coach. He's got some Super Bowl wins, right? He's had a lot of legacy winning in his organization. We're not criticizing him in that realm. What we're talking about is a very specific instance. And if we're going to get really technical, this problem kept them out of the playoffs this year. There was a very real result, very real feedback that happened as a result of this, okay? So we look at the Le'Veon Bell issue. Well, problem this year. These guys are going to lose ultimately what is probably the best running back and the best wide receiver in the game, arguably, in the same year. And both of them blew up, and it created problems. Meanwhile, Roethlisberger had arguably his best season as a pro, statistically speaking. And yet a lot of this is, it's not Tomlin's problem. It's Roethlisberger's problem. He doesn't do the right thing as the leader on the field. You buy that?
He's not the leader. So I want to step back. I'm going to come back to this question, but I'm going to go back. I'm going to pull a Bill Simmons and ask a question. Is Mike Tomlin really a good coach? I want to just look at something. He has a .654 winning percentage in the regular season. So he's 125, 66, and 1. He has only missed the postseason 4 times in his 11-year career as a coach. Pretty good coach, right?
Yeah.
Won the Super Bowl in his second year with largely Bill Cowher's team. I mean, I don't think anybody would. I mean, that's not being that's not critical. It's true.
An observation. Okay.
Yeah, Bill Cowher's team. In the playoffs, a .533 win percentage, only 8-7 in the postseason. All this drama, hasn't won a Super Bowl since 2008. That was with Bill Cowher's team. Is Mike Tomlin really a good coach?
Well, I'm gonna answer that and say yes. I think he's a good coach, but good is a sliding scale. I mean, there's Belichick, best of all time, good, and there's the guy who's been to a Super Bowl and won one. Regardless, I mean, I don't care what you say. Winning a Super Bowl. I mean, you go back and look at Barry Switzer, for example. He won with Jimmy Johnson's team. I mean, end of story. I think you could make a strong case that Barry was a really great college coach, obviously. Was he a great pro coach? I'm going to say probably not.
And I think especially not when you pair with Jerry Jones, by the way.
Yeah, and I think Jimmy Johnson was, as much as I hate to say it, because he was at Oklahoma State, but I think he was a great coach, both at the collegiate and pro level. So this scale slides a bit. I think we'd much rather have him than a whole host of other people we could name. It would really be interesting to put a guy like Tomlin in a turnaround situation and see what his skill level is, where he has to rebuild and reset. I mean, Sean McVay, for example.
He took over, because, I mean, Tomlin took over teams that were successful for decades, as Steelers fans know. So I
don't think he's a bad coach. Let me put it that way.
I tend to agree with you. Is he a great coach? That's a different argument. But 8-7 in the playoffs, all this drama, I think that we jump to, I mean, he's well-versed. He's a good orator. He fires up the team because Antonio Brown has showed us on film when he wasn't supposed to. I mean, I think he does a lot of things well, but Does he have control? Does he set expectations and hold people accountable? Is he a courageous leader? I mean, the evidence would say no.
The evidence would create a problem, which immediately, by the way, all the haters will come out of the woodwork and they'll start saying, who are you guys and what are you? Listen, we're not hating on anybody. We're analyzing a leadership situation, which is, by the way, what you have to do in the workplace. You have to be able to set aside this ego component as a leader, as much as we're going to ask Antonio Brown to set aside his ego component as a player. You have to be able to look in the mirror. I mean, we just did 2 episodes on emotional intelligence. What is your self-awareness? We've spent time with Jocko Willink and Leif Babin, Navy SEALs. You know, every problem is a leadership problem, extreme ownership. I think great leaders, Robbie, have to look in the mirror and say, look, regardless of what anybody says, I have to look at my role as a leader. Could I be doing something better? I think unequivocally what the evidence is saying is there's some things that Mike Tomlin needs to change. It may not be X's and O's things. In fact, typically it's not the X's and O's things that make people a great coach. It's
no, and I want to go back to your question about, is this Ben Roethlisberger's fault? I mean, look, Roethlisberger, in my opinion, shouldn't be airing baggage in the media, but guess what? The leader, the executive leader, Mike Tomlin, allows it. So, yes, AB has some blame. Roethlisberger probably has some blame. But at the end of the day, the large chunk of that pie is Mike Tomlin. He is the executive leader. So, Pops, I think the fundamental question, as we equate this to the workplace, this is a leadership podcast. We love to use sports as an analogy because we're sports dorks, and it's such a great analogy for the workplace. I mean, we play to win, Pops, as you talk about all the time. Do talented employees always, power word, do they always carry baggage? And should you deal with it?
Well, I think in my experience now over 3 decades, I think highly talented employees always do come with a certain set of baggage. Now, baggage tends to have a negative connotation with it, right? It tends to be, well, oh, this is all going to be bad and it's going to be a train wreck and we got to deal with it. It's not always true, but listen, talented employees, talented players have typically now, listen, if you're out there listening, typically have been coddled because they've been really good. I mean, I coached football for a long time. A kid is good in 4th grade. He's being coddled in 5th, 7th, 9th, 12th, college.
All the way through.
He's always been special, center of attention. There's always a lot of ego involved. Hey, listen, everybody knows if they pay any attention to Antonio Brown and this saga, the man has got a ridiculously negative background. He has had a lot of issues and challenges in his life. Those things are going to translate into his everyday behavior. He wants to be valued. He wants to be affirmed. He wants to be important. He wants to be recognized. These are ego issues. And in my experience, I think hyper-talented, at least, let's say, hyper-talented employees typically bring some level of baggage. Doesn't always mean it's going to be negative, but I think the savvy leader recognizes that an A++ player, a Michael Jordan, those guys,
right,
come with a certain set of things that you at least have to be prepared to deal with. They can go off the rails. You mentioned San Francisco, Philadelphia. Terrell Owens, you mentioned him. He blew up some locker rooms. Guy was spectacularly talented, a physical freak. I mean, incredible guy. Jerry Rice was the same. He didn't blow up the locker room. But I will tell you, you go read and study about Jerry Rice, yeah, he had some baggage. He had some value issues. He wanted to be the best, all these kinds of things. Before you jump in, let me read this quote from the article that I highlighted. It says, but Tomlin's special treatment of his star receiver may have backfired, one Steeler said. As the leash gets longer, Brown gets a feeling he can do whatever he wants. That's where Tomlin might have wished he would have squashed this earlier. Multiple players believe that fining Brown for conduct detrimental to the team, which they did not do in Week 17, would have gotten his attention a long, long time ago. Just because, Robbie, someone has an ego or baggage doesn't mean that it has to become a train wreck. But to your point, I think it's absolutely on the leader to make sure that doesn't happen.
Well, I'm going to go off Stephen A. Smith on you because you're wrong. You're dead wrong.
Of course.
You didn't even listen to the question, Max Kellerman. You didn't even answer the question I'm asking you here. Okay, look, you're wrong. And no, all hyper-talented employees don't have baggage, period. Have they been treated differently throughout their professional career, perhaps even back into their schooling and sports, whatever? Sure. But do they all carry baggage, which was the question? No, absolutely not. You're wrong. They don't come up and like everyone's just struggling. They want to be coddled and they want a trophy. Stop it. Okay,
not so fast, my friend. Not so fast.
There's people that work hard. That
I got to take on a persona from the college football.
You need, I was patient. Let me finish, Max Kellerman. You go respect me.
Shoot.
That must be Max Kellerman.
Kellerman always interrupts.
So here's the truth. Just because I have talent, just because I am successful, or I maybe work harder than others because I have an internal drive, does that mean I always have baggage? Absolutely not. The important part of this argument is that you must understand that I don't care if you are an A+ player or a C- player. I have the same set of core expectations for all of you. Now, as the A+ player, does your, as we like to talk about, Pops, we wrote about it in the book, does your freedom box expand as you earn the right to do more? Absolutely. But my core expectations of you to be a professional, to be respectful, to show up on time, things of that nature, those don't change. And you know what? You have one opportunity to right that ship, and then I can't use you. And it doesn't matter, because that is going to bring the whole team down. That performance, if I allow that, we say this all the time, it normalizes at the lowest common denominator. And if you start showing up late, everybody's going to show up late. That's what I'm saying.
Okay, well, good enough. Yeah, thank you for reminding me to be patient. I did my best. It didn't work because you were clearly way off base when you said I was wrong. In fact, you're so wrong, it's ridiculous. And I can prove it easily. Now, we may be talking about semantics when we talk about baggage. You may have defined it in some negative connotation and said not everybody's negative, but that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying everybody comes with a certain set of issues and challenges that you're going to have to address. In fact, I would say every human being,
every person,
but
that's just different experience.
Hang on. Name one, just one hyper powerful performing player anywhere who doesn't have baggage. Name one.
Robert Franklin Riggs II, your boy right here. I mean, zero.
Your Honor, I rest my case. That didn't take as long as I thought to win. All right. Well, so let's just go from that. All right. We agree to disagree a little bit on that one, but let me ask you.
Well, but hold on, because we actually do agree. It's not that there's baggage negative. It's that every individual human being, take the talented thing out. Every individual human being has had different experiences, knowledge, education, experience, etc. Said experience twice there. But so they bring different things to the table. So they have different ways they need to be led and develop that. So that we agree on.
Yeah, because what do we always say? Leadership is not generational, and that's what we're addressing in the book. It's relational. Leadership is about relationship. But so here's the question. Can you, in fact, should you treat talented employees differently?
Great question. So let's talk about this. I alluded to it a little bit earlier. Now, when you have an individual that continues to perform and you give them additional responsibility, some people will say, oh, well, you're treating her differently because you're giving her more. You're giving her higher levels of decision-making authority, et cetera, et cetera. That is something that she has earned through her high performance. That is not me saying I'm going to pull away the expectations that I have of the entire team. Those no longer apply to you. Things like professionalism, respect, assuming positive intent, communicating, things of that nature. That absolutely applies to you. So people often see that and go, oh, well, you're treating that high performer differently. No, I'm not. She has earned the right to do more. And if she steps outside of that, one of those expectations, she will quickly get brought back down and we'll have a dialogue and she'll have to re-earn that trust. So absolutely not. You don't treat them differently. Do they earn more responsibility? Yes, but you don't treat them differently.
Hey, thanks for joining us here on the Counter Mentor Leadership Podcast. We're going to take just a very brief time out. Robbie, when we come back, I'm going to ask you a second question that's related to that one. If an employee is absolutely killing it on the performance side, absolutely crushing performance, should a company tolerate bad behavior for the sake of the whole team's success in the moment? Think about last year's Super Bowl. We'll be right back.
Hey, it's Robbie. People often ask us if we work with companies, do we actually train leaders and train management teams, or did we just write a book? Well, of course we do. You can find all the details and more of these podcasts at countermentors.com. Or for more information, you can send a message to kr@countermentors.com.
Hey, welcome back. Counter Mentor Leadership Podcast. Robbie Riggs, Kelly Riggs. And again, you can find our book at countermentors.com. Audiobook is out, by the way.
That's right.
I'm doing that, right?
Oh, awesome. So much.
You can follow us on Twitter at countermentors. And I'm a great follow on Twitter at Kelly Riggs. Robbie is sort of meaningless. But if you want to follow him, If you need to add another cupcake to your social list, at Robby Riggs. Make sure you get
Good jokes. Good jokes.
Yeah, the jokester. Hey, so before the break, we talked about if an employee is killing it. I mean, they're crushing their numbers. They're way better than everybody in whatever role they're in, whether it's sales or production or whatever. Should you tolerate it? Should a company or a leader tolerate it for the behavior or for the sake of, rather, the entire team's success? Now, this really came up in a big way, Robby, last year. And I wrote an article about it. You can find it. You'll see the link here on the screen. And if you're listening in, you can go to my blog, bizlockerroom.com, and search for high stakes leadership. I wrote an article about this because, man, Belichick got excoriated because he kept Malcolm Butler out of the Super Bowl, and the critics came out of nowhere. And one of the biggest complaints, one of the biggest criticisms was, that was selfish and unfair of Belichick to do what he did because it cost the rest of the team the Super Bowl. You buy that? Man,
this is a tough one for me because we don't know what happened. Butler and Belichick, neither of them will talk about it. So did something happen? Was it that Belichick truly thought the team would be in a better position to win because Butler, was struggling the last few games, which he was? Was it a performance thing? Was it a behavior thing? Did he show up late to a meeting? We don't know. And it's hard for me to Monday morning quarterback, if you will, Bill Belichick in that decision. Simply, if he broke a team rule or he wasn't living up to the standards, then absolutely zero qualms with what Belichick did. I mean, it doesn't matter. And it doesn't matter if you're Tom Brady or Julian Edelman or Gronk. I mean, you have to abide by that. You have to do your job. I mean, that's period.
All right. So what about the other alternative, though, Rob? Let's say that in Belichick's analysis of the other team, that he believed that having another guy in, just for the sake of argument, gave him the best opportunity to win. Right. And people, in the absence of information, will insert whatever assumptions they want that fit their narrative, right? But do you think can you say that's a good idea too? Hey, Belichick thought, hey, listen, taking this guy off the table was actually better, gave us a better chance to win. Are you okay with that?
Absolutely. I mean, look, especially a guy like Bill Belichick, who has proven over and over and over and over that he is the greatest coach to ever walk the sidelines. I have zero problem with that. If he truly thought that was the best chance the team had to win, then yeah. Frankly, I watched that game, as you know, obviously a big Patriots fan. There's no way that, I mean, Butler has his struggles, but we couldn't freaking cover. They could have covered me that night. I mean, the Eagles went off. So that's why I think something had to have happened. I just don't see how bringing in the backup corner, who's really the third string corner, how that was the right move. So
you know what I don't like about this whole deal is that we look at the result and judge the decision made before the result. So a leadership walks around with a big target on his or her back, and you better make the right decision because we're going to pick you apart afterwards, and we're going to insert all of our reasoning and rationale and tell you why you're wrong. And it's one of the problems I have with it is that if he would have won the game, probably wouldn't have been an issue.
No, it wouldn't even have been brought up. Well, it would have been brought up as what a great move by Belichick. So let's anchor this back to the workplace, though, because, Pops, you and I work with companies all over the world, and we ask this question. So, Jimmy is truly, obviously, you meet the guy for 30 seconds. He is an absolute nightmare. He's a jerk. He's inappropriate. Insert negative behavior.
Whatever, right.
But he's our top. We'll use sales guys. It's easy to quantify. He's our top sales guy. I mean, he carries the load. 15% of our sales.
By a long way.
One guy. 15% of our guys. Yeah,
right.
Killing it. So we talk to leaders all the time and say, why do you allow that? And they look at us like we have three heads. Like, well, what do you mean? Like, because he is why the whole company got their bonuses. So people can just deal with it because we got our bonus last year because of that guy and he hit his numbers. So, Pops, is that a right move for a leader in an organization in the real world where shareholder value matters, hitting your numbers matters? Is it okay to put up that behavior if they perform?
Well, this is a complicated question, clearly, but I'm gonna draw some boundaries around this and explain. But my answer is absolutely not. It's not acceptable. However, if a leader goes about it and tries to close the barn door after all the cows are out of the barn, you got a problem. In other words, if you've never set cultural norms, if you're not living those norms, if the expectations aren't clear, and if I haven't demonstrated that consistency in the long term, then to come in one day and say, hey, look, I can't tolerate this guy anymore. He's such a nightmare, and throw him out, you're going to get a ton of criticism for that, right, wrong, or indifferent. But what I do know is if every person that walks in the building, I've set very clear expectations for the kind of people we are, the way we do things, what our cultural norms are, and we live by those consistently, then when that guy gets off the reservation the first time, I'm calling him in the room and saying, hey, let me tell you about what I'm seeing. It's not consistent with the kind of people we are. You tell me what's going on, and I'm going to get a new set of commitments from him to change his behavior or her. Yeah. And if he or she doesn't do that down the road, then it's not about their behavior. It's about the fact they can't keep their commitments to me as an individual. Absolutely. I got a trust issue with that problem.
Absolutely. And Pops, that's all fine and good if I'm taking over a new team. But you don't understand. You know, we got Linda, who was driving to the office today, and she has this problem in real life. And this person has worked here for 7 months and is killing it. And everyone else knows how inappropriate. How about, what does Linda do? I mean, what does she do in this scenario? Because it's when you take over a team and you set from the beginning, that's easy. Put that in air quotes, of course. But what does she do when she has not dealt with this problem in 7 months? How does she, what's her path forward?
Well, what I believe you have to do is begin to sit down and have very real conversations with the offender, whoever the high performer is, and begin to ask them insightful questions, which most leaders are loath to do. They're too busy. They don't have time to mess with this. And by the way, to use your word, they don't have the courage of confrontation anyway. You know, They don't even like it. But you've got to sit down and say, hey, look, there's nothing we like more than your performance. But it comes with some challenges, and let's talk about those and why those exist and what we could do to minimize them. And over the course of time, I'm going to help them understand the why behind my concerns. Listen, ultimately, if you live by a set of different rules than everybody else, then it is going to blow up the company at some point. Sure. We may be getting tons of bonuses now, but this unresolved conflict is going to rear its ugly head in the future. And so I just want to begin to try to minimize that and deal with it. And at some point, I will have to ask them to make a commitment to change their behavior. So,
well, I got to tell you, I've worked with a company that, I mean, at the leadership level had this challenge, and this leader was really, really good at on paper showing the results that they created, but it was an absolute nightmare. No one wanted to work with this person. I mean, it was terrible, and so executive leadership justified, well, we'll just let that person do their thing because they get results. And I mean, it was debilitating to the organization. So look, absolutely, that short term investing that time, I think takeaway here is investing the time to have that conversation, setting those key expectations, following up and following through, having the courage to own it. Every problem is a leadership problem, and you take ownership of it and attack it. That's how you're going to make things better. And might there be a dip in performance? Sure. But the long term is what you're playing here. I mean, you're not a mercenary. I mean, you're not trying to be there for 6 months. You're trying to be there and build a legacy. If that's your goal, you got to deal with it.
Yeah, I think so too. I think the courage is the big word, because most people shy away from the confrontation because they just don't like it for one reason or another. They've never learned conflict resolution. They'd rather avoid the pain and the hassle and the criticism and the inevitable, attacks.
Back.
Yeah, from everywhere. But your word, I think, is a good one. Courage is the ability to set aside a disagreeable present for a much better future. And setting that aside means I'm going to have to tolerate a lot of pain and so forth. So what people do is they simply, they justify it. They rationalize it in their mind. That self-justification is, hey, look, I know this guy or this person is killing us, but fill in the blank. We're getting X, Y, and Z out of this deal. Right. What they don't quantify is how much it's tearing up their legacy as a leader. They're compromising their leadership integrity, how much it's hurting the performance of other people, how much drag it creates in the organization while we clean up all the messes.
Yeah, and by the way, how much it impacts that leader's how other people feel about that leader. I mean, his or her legacy, perception, or whatever word you want to use, every single day that they allow it to go by. And by the way, Pops, most of the time, those leaders justify it because that person is saving them time. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, saving them time. And now they're thinking, you're going to take away that person that saves me time. I'm going to have to invest time. And they just see this time debt getting big, and they're like, it's overwhelming. Can't do it.
Hey, before we get out, one other question I want to ask you, because it's a common sort of criticism is, it's narrow-minded, son. It's oppressive. It's micromanaging to enforce your cultural values, because, who are you to determine the way we should act? We're the ones doing the work. We're the ones working. Yeah. We're the ones creating the results on the field.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah,
you're right.
How do you do it?
Yeah. Wow. It's so. without completely rabbit holing into the state of the world right now, it's sad to me that this has become, for any conflict, any contentious conversation, we revert to you are blank, sexist, racist, a bigot, micromanage, controlling,
oppressive, fascist.
Exactly. To much bigger, scarier, and including 4-letter words. So, it's sad to me that's where we've gotten. But the reality is, look, if you're a leader, you are responsible for producing results. Leadership is the art and science of getting stuff done through other people. You're responsible for creating results. And in order to create repeatable results and create a culture of ownership where people want to be part of it, you must care and feed that culture, which means some days you got to fight the wolves. And oftentimes that is internal. And that is not narrow-minded. It's not oppressive. And look, for those of you that get your feelings hurt and you're yelling and screaming at us right now while you're commuting, so many things I want to say right now. I'm going to keep it PG. While you're commuting to work, I would tell you that you need to change your mindset, and you need to think about, this isn't about someone else. It's about you. And why don't you, for once, think about the other people and what's good for other people, not just about what makes you feel good. That'd be my thought on that.
I love it. My hot take for this episode is simple. Listen, you can set aside a disagreeable present, because the future and long-term performance is more important than the high performance you're getting out of somebody who's killing you right now. You got to have the courage to address it. And in doing so, probably counterintuitively, your value as a leader will actually go up. It's going to hurt like crazy right now, Rob, but it's going to be better in the long term. How about you?
That's right. My hot take is you're wrong. You didn't even answer the question. You're wrong. No, my hot take is, Pops, you talked about courage, but I think more than anything, leadership, when you're working with high performers, you need to invest in that relationship. Oftentimes with our high performers, we ignore them and oftentimes push more work on them because they're a high performer, which feeds a lot of this frustration and anger. Insert Antonio Brown. You have to invest in that relationship with that high performer, just like you do a low performer. So invest in the relationship at all levels.
Yeah, we've talked a lot about the leader in this scenario. We actually didn't talk a lot about Antonio Brown and the way he may be feeling about it. I feel that coming in a future episode. Hey, that's going to do it for us. We're Counter Mentor Leadership Podcast. Thanks for joining us. CounterMentors.com. Make sure you subscribe on iTunes. And by the way, it would not hurt our feelings whatsoever if you went on and gave us a good rating. That helps us get seen inside of the search results when you're looking for Counter Mentors and Kelly and Robby Riggs. Hey, we'll see you next time. We got a great one lined up, Robby. We're going to talk about personality and the role it plays in effective leadership. We'll see you next time.
Go Pack!
Thanks for listening to the Counter Mentor Leadership Podcast. If you like the show, you can give Robby a trophy by going to iTunes and posting a review of the show. Reviews help the show get noticed. So if you post a review, send us a note, and we'll send you a free autographed hardcover copy of the book. Just make sure you say something nice to build up his little self-esteem. By the way, you can find our book and previous podcasts at CounterMentors.com. Make sure to follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Opinions expressed by guests may not represent the opinions of the hosts.